My son watched in silence as my daughter-in-law rifled through my purse and pulled out all my money. Jessica had my bills in her hands, counting them one by one with a calmness that made my blood run cold. $20. 40. 60. 80. She didn't stop. Her face showed an expression of satisfaction, as if she were doing something completely normal, something that belonged to her by right. And Michael, my only son, was sitting on the sofa less than 6 feet away. His eyes were looking elsewhere, toward the window, anywhere but at what was happening right in front of him. He said nothing. He did nothing. He just watched in silence, a passive spectator to my humiliation. I tried to speak, but the words got stuck in my throat. 71 years of life, and I never imagined the day would come when I would feel robbed in my own home by my own family. Jessica finally finished counting. $120. Everything I had in cash for the week. Money I had withdrawn 2 days ago to pay the gardener, buy medicine, and keep a little aside for emergencies. She folded the bills carefully and, without a shred of shame, began to stuff them into her pants pocket. It was in that moment that I found my voice. Jessica, that is my money. My daughter-in-law looked up at me, and there was no guilt in her eyes. There was only annoyance, as if I were a bothersome child interrupting something important. It is more than your obligation to help support our family, she declared, finishing hiding the bills in her pocket. Her words fell on me like a bucket of ice water. Obligation? Support her family? Michael had a job. Jessica worked too, or at least that's what they had told me. Since when had my Social Security check become their source of income? I looked at my son, waiting, silently begging him to say something, to defend me, to set boundaries. But Michael kept his gaze lost, as if the conversation had nothing to do with him. Michael, I said, and my voice sounded weaker than I would have liked. Are you going to allow this? My son finally looked at me. There was something in his eyes I didn't recognize, something that scared me more than Jessica's brazen attitude. It was resignation. It was cowardice. It was the total absence of the man I had raised. Mom, don't make things complicated, he murmured, and then looked back toward the window. Don't make things complicated. Those words echoed in my mind like a sentence. My own son had just told me not to complicate things while his wife blatantly robbed me. Jessica got up from the sofa, tossed my purse aside as if it were a meaningless object, and walked toward the kitchen with the attitude of someone who had just run a routine errand. I'm going to make something to eat, she announced, as if nothing had happened. Eleanor, do you have chicken in the fridge? Oh, and I need you to go to the bank tomorrow and withdraw another $200. Household expenses have gone up. I stood paralyzed. Household expenses? Of my house? And now she was giving me orders about how much money I should withdraw and when? I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 3:20 in the afternoon, a standard Tuesday that had transformed into a nightmare. I needed air. I needed to think. I needed to understand how I had reached this point. I got up from the chair with trembling legs and walked toward my bedroom. I closed the door carefully, sat on the edge of my bed, and let the tears flow in silence. How had I allowed this to happen? 20 minutes later, I heard the sound of a phone ringing in the living room. It wasn't my cell phone ringtone. It was a different one, more modern, probably Jessica's or Michael's. Then, another phone began to ring almost at the same time. 2 simultaneous calls, and then I heard the scream. A scream that made me jump off the bed and throw my bedroom door open. It was Jessica. She was screaming with a desperation I had never heard from her before. What? No, that's impossible. There has to be a mistake. Her voice sounded crazed, out of control. Michael was also talking on the phone. His face had lost all color and his hands were shaking so much he almost dropped the device. I walked out of my room and into the living room. Jessica had the phone pressed to her ear, her free hand gripping her hair tightly, and her eyes were bulging. You have to be wrong. Check again. That transfer cannot have gone out of my account. A transfer. Something related to money. And by the look of pure panic on her face, something had gone terribly wrong. Michael hung up his phone and looked at Jessica with an expression of horror. Jessica, they just called me too. From the bank. They say there was suspicious activity on our accounts. They say that we lost almost everything. My daughter-in-law let herself fall onto the sofa, the phone slipping from her hand and hitting the floor. Her breathing was agitated, irregular, as if she were about to suffer a panic attack. "No, no, 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 no," she repeated over and over, rocking back and forth. I stood in the hallway, observing the scene. I didn't understand exactly what was happening, but a part of me, a very small and dark part I had never known, felt something akin to satisfaction. But before I could process that feeling, I needed to understand how I had gotten here, how I had allowed my life to turn into this. And to understand the present, I needed to go back to the beginning. It had all started 3 months ago, on a September afternoon that seemed promising and calm. I had been living alone for 5 years since my husband Robert passed away. 5 years in which I had learned to be independent in a way I never imagined possible. At 71, I managed my own finances, kept my house spotless, went to the grocery store every week, attended my doctor's appointments without anyone's help, and had even learned to use apps on my phone to pay bills. My pension was modest, but sufficient. $900 a month that I managed with precision. $500 for basic household expenses, $150 for medications and doctors, $100 for savings, and the rest for small pleasures like my knitting class on Thursdays or the monthly lunch with my friends. Michael visited me every 2 weeks, usually on Sundays. He would bring donuts, we would sit in the backyard, talk about his job at the construction company, his plans, life. They were simple but valuable moments. My son had always been attentive, respectful, affectionate, but then he met Jessica. At first, I was happy. Michael was 38 years old and had never married. He always said he hadn't found the right person. When he told me he had met someone special, my heart filled with hope. I wanted my son to be happy, to start a family, to not be alone. The first time he brought Jessica home, she was charming. She arrived with flowers, helped me prepare dinner, praised every corner of my home. She was 33, worked as an administrator at a medical center, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. "Eleanor, your house is beautiful," she told me while we drank coffee on the porch. "You can tell the love with which you care for every detail." She made me feel seen, appreciated. Perhaps that should have been my first red flag. People who want something from you always start by flattering you. They got married 4 months after meeting. A small, intimate wedding in the garden of a restaurant. I paid for my new dress and gifted them $3,000 from my savings so they could better furnish the apartment they had rented. It was everything I had saved, but I did it with love. He was my only son, and I wanted him to start his marriage in the best way possible. The first few weeks after the wedding were normal. Michael kept visiting me on Sundays, although now he came with Jessica. She continued to be kind, although I noticed she talked more than before, had opinions on everything, and subtly began to steer the conversations. "Eleanor, do you still wash clothes by hand?" she asked one day, looking at my small utility sink. "You should buy a modern washer. At your age, you shouldn't be scrubbing clothes like that." Her comment made me uncomfortable, but I said nothing. I had a washing machine, a semi-automatic one that worked perfectly. Washing some delicate items by hand was my choice, not an imposition of poverty. "I like doing it," I replied with a smile. "It keeps me active." Jessica exchanged a look with Michael, a look I didn't know how to interpret at that moment. Now I know what kind of look that means. "See? I told you your mother is stubborn." The visits continued, but I started noticing subtle changes in my son. He spoke less. He smiled less. When I asked him something, he often looked at Jessica before answering, as if he needed her approval. One Sunday in October, they arrived without warning. It wasn't the usual visiting Sunday. It was a Wednesday afternoon. The doorbell rang, and when I opened the door, Jessica had 2 large suitcases. "Eleanor, we need to stay here for a few days," Jessica announced, walking past me without waiting for an invitation. "There are problems with mold in our apartment. They are doing repairs and it's uninhabitable." Michael entered behind her, carrying more luggage, avoiding eye contact with me. "A few days?" I asked, trying to process what was happening. "Yes, Mom. It'll just be a few days," Michael said finally. "Maybe a week. I hope it's not a problem." What could I say? He was my son. If he needed help, I would be there. That is what mothers do. Of course, it's not a problem, I replied, although an uncomfortable sensation settled in my stomach. You can use the guest room. That first night was strange. Jessica checked the guest room and began moving things immediately. This curtain is too dark. It doesn't let light in, she said, taking it down without asking. And this comforter smells like mildew, Eleanor. Do you have another one? The comforter did not smell like mildew. I had washed and dried it in the sun just 2 days prior. But I didn't argue. I didn't want to start conflicts. During dinner, Jessica commented on my food. You always cook with so much salt, she noted, tasting the stew I had prepared. At your age, you should watch your blood pressure more. My blood pressure is fine, I replied, trying to keep calm. My doctor says it is perfect for my age. Doctors don't always know everything, she retorted, leaving her fork on the plate. My aunt had a stroke from eating with too much salt. She was the same age as you. Michael ate in silence, without defending my cooking, without saying anything. That night, lying in my bed, I heard voices coming from the guest room. I couldn't distinguish the exact words, but the tone was clear. Jessica was complaining about something, and Michael was responding with monosyllables. The few days turned into a week, then 2 weeks, then a month. Each day that passed, Jessica felt more like the owner of my house. She began to reorganize my kitchen. Eleanor, your dishes are organized wrong, she told me one morning, taking everything out of the cupboards. The heaviest ones should go on the bottom, the light ones on top. That way you won't hurt your back reaching for them. I hadn't asked for her opinion. I didn't need her to reorganize my kitchen. But before I could protest, she had already changed everything around. Then it was my refrigerator. We have to throw this out, and this, she declared, pulling out food that, according to her, was too old. A yogurt that expired in 3 days, vegetables that were perfectly fresh, a piece of cheese I had barely opened. Jessica, that cheese is fine, I tried to say. Eleanor, you can't risk it with questionable food at your age. Food poisoning could be serious. And so, little by little, she began to take control of every aspect of my life. By the 2nd month of their stay, Jessica wasn't just reorganizing my things anymore. Now she was giving direct orders. Eleanor, don't go out today, she told me one morning when I was getting ready to go to the grocery store. It's too cold outside. At your age, you could catch a cold, and that can turn into pneumonia. It was 65 degrees outside. Perfectly normal weather for October. I had gone out in much lower temperatures without any problem. Jessica, I have gone to the store on Thursdays for years. I will be fine. You will not go, she said firmly, taking the shopping list out of my hand. Give me the money. I'll go. You rest. I looked at Michael, who was eating breakfast in silence. I waited for him to say something, to remind his wife that this was my house and my decisions. But he just drank his coffee, eyes fixed on his phone. I gave Jessica $40. She took the money, put it in her wallet, and left without saying anything else. When she returned 3 hours later, she brought barely half of what I normally bought, and she didn't give me back the change. Where is the rest of the money? I asked. There was no change, she replied, putting the few bags in the kitchen. Everything is more expensive now, Eleanor. You should know that. I knew exactly how much things cost. I had shopped at that same store for 15 years. $40 should have been enough for much more than what she brought. But I said nothing. Not yet. I was still trying to convince myself that this was temporary, that soon they would leave and everything would return to normal. That same week, Jessica began to comment on my daily routine. Why do you go out for a walk every morning? She asked, watching me put on my sneakers. You could fall, break a hip. These things happen at your age. I walk because it keeps me healthy, I replied, trying to maintain patience. My doctor recommends it. Doctors recommend a lot of things that aren't always sensible, she retorted. What if you get dizzy? What if you fall and no one is around to help you? It would be a tragedy. I went out for a walk anyway. I needed that time for myself, those 30 minutes of freedom where I could breathe fresh air and not feel the constant pressure of her presence in my house. When I returned, Jessica was in my bedroom, my private space. The door was wide open, and she was going through my closet. What are you doing? I asked, feeling indignation beginning to replace patience. I'm organizing your clothes, she said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You have too many old things you don't use anymore. I'm going to separate them for donation. Jessica, those are my clothes. I decide what I want to keep. She turned toward me with an expression of annoyance. Eleanor, you have blouses from 20 years ago. They are out of style and taking up unnecessary space. You need someone to help you take these decisions, because clearly you can't do it alone. I felt something break inside me at that moment. Can't do it alone. As if I were useless. As if I were incapable. Get out of my room, I said, and my voice sounded firmer than I felt inside. Jessica looked at me in surprise. It was probably the first time I had spoken to her with that tone. You don't have to get like that, she said, leaving a pile of clothes on my bed. I'm just trying to help you. She left the room with heavy steps, and I closed the door behind her. I sat on my bed, surrounded by my clothes scattered everywhere, and felt like crying. But I didn't cry. Not yet. I still had some dignity left. That night, while I was preparing dinner, I heard Jessica talking to someone on the phone in the living room. Her voice was loud enough for me to hear every word. Yes, we are living with her now. No, it's not temporary. I think we'll stay a good while. The house? It's big. 3 bedrooms, yard. It's in a good neighborhood. Yes, all hers. It's in her name. I don't know. She's never said anything about a will. Don't worry. I'm taking care of everything. It's a matter of time. My blood froze. Matter of time for what? What was she taking care of? I stopped chopping vegetables and stood motionless, listening. Michael isn't a problem. He does what I tell him. The old lady is stubborn, but she can be handled. You just have to make her believe it's all for her own good, for her health, for her safety. Exactly. Like with your mother-in-law. Same strategy. The old lady. That's what she called me when I wasn't present, or when she thought I wasn't listening. I felt nauseous. I wanted to leave the kitchen, confront her, scream at her to get out of my house immediately. But something stopped me. A little voice in my head said, "You need to know more. You need to understand what she is planning." I finished preparing dinner in silence. During the meal, I observed Michael and Jessica with new eyes. My son ate mechanically, without looking at me. Jessica talked non-stop about how exhausted she was, about how difficult it was to take care of such a big house, about how much she and Michael sacrificed to be there with me. Sacrificed? They didn't pay rent. They ate my food. They used my utilities. And I hadn't asked them to come. Eleanor, tomorrow I need you to come with me to the bank, Jessica said suddenly. To the bank? What for? You need to add Michael to your accounts. As an authorized user? In case of emergency, someone has to be able to access your money to help you. There it was. The real motive. It wasn't concern. It was control. It was access to my money. I don't see the need, I replied, trying to keep calm. I handle my accounts perfectly. Eleanor, don't be difficult. It is for your own good. What happens if you get sick? If you have an accident? Someone needs to be able to pay your bills, your medications. I have my sister Barbara for that. She is already authorized in case of emergency. Jessica dropped her fork onto her plate with a sharp clatter. Your sister lives 2 hours from here. Michael is your son. He lives with you now. It makes more sense for it to be him. Michael finally looked up from his plate. Mom, Jessica is right. It's just a precaution. It's just a precaution. Those words hurt more than everything Jessica had said. I am not going to add anyone else to my accounts, I said firmly. My finances are in order, and they will stay that way. The silence that followed was tense, heavy. Jessica looked at me with an expression she no longer tried to hide. It was pure contempt. You are incredibly selfish, she finally said. After everything we do for you. I got up from the table, leaving my plate half finished, and went to my room. This time I did cry. I cried for the situation I found myself in. I cried for my son who had become a stranger. I cried for my house that no longer felt like mine, but the tears wouldn't last forever. Something was changing inside me. A small spark of resistance was beginning to ignite. The next morning I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I had slept poorly, tossing and turning in bed, processing everything I had heard the night before. Jessica had spoken of me as if I were an obstacle, a problem to solve, and Michael, my own son, seemed to be completely in agreement with her. I got up early, as always, and went to the kitchen to make coffee. But when I arrived, I discovered someone had already been there. My favorite mugs, the ones I always used, were put away on the highest shelf of the cabinet, out of my reach. In their place, on the low shelf, were plastic cups, cheap cups I had never bought. Jessica appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed, with that fake smile I had learned to hate. "Good morning, Eleanor. I see you found the new cups I bought. They are safer for you. The ceramic ones are too heavy. You could drop them and break your toes." I didn't answer. I simply took a chair, stepped up carefully, and reached for my ceramic mug from the high shelf. The same one my husband had given me for our 20th anniversary. "Eleanor, what are you doing?" Jessica's voice rose in pitch. "You could fall." "I am not going to fall," I said, climbing down from the chair with my mug in hand. "And I am going to use my mug, as I have done for the last 15 years. I made my coffee in silence, ignoring Jessica's furious glare. When I sat down to eat my breakfast, she approached and put several papers on the table in front of me. "Since you didn't want to go to the bank yesterday, I brought these forms home. You just need to sign them here and here," she said, pointing with her finger. "It's to add Michael as a joint holder of your accounts. I already told you no. Eleanor, this is ridiculous. It is for your safety." "My safety is perfectly fine without those papers." Jessica grabbed the documents roughly and threw them onto the living room table. "You are a stubborn and irresponsible old woman," she spat the words with venom. "You don't know what is good for you." Michael appeared at that moment, just woken up, with messy hair and puffy eyes. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice tired. "Your mother refuses to be reasonable," Jessica said, crossing her arms. "She refuses to sign the papers to protect her own money." Michael looked at me, and for a second, just a second, I thought I saw a glimmer of the son he used to be. But it disappeared as quickly as it arrived. "Mom, why are you being so difficult?" Those words were like a slap in the face. I was being difficult. Me, in my own house, for wanting to maintain control of my own money. "I am not being difficult, Michael. I am being prudent." "Prudent would be listening to your family," Jessica intervened. "But it seems you prefer to distrust your own son." The way she manipulated the situation was masterful. Somehow, she had managed to turn me into the villain of this story. The following days were even worse. Jessica intensified her campaign of control. She began to intercept my mail. One Thursday morning, when the mailman passed, she ran out to collect the mail before I could get to the door. "Eleanor, let me check this for you," she said, flipping through my letters. "There are many scams now targeting seniors. You need someone to protect you." "Give me my mail, Jessica. I'm just verifying there is nothing dangerous." I literally had to snatch the letters from her hands. Among them was my bank statement. Jessica had tried to open it. "Did you try to open my private mail?" I asked, incredulous. "It is for your own good. I need to know if there are suspicious charges on your account. That is none of your business." "Everything that happens in this house is my business," she retorted. And in her voice there was an authority that made my blood run cold. "Michael and I live here. We are family, and family takes care of each other, even if you clearly don't understand that." I locked myself in my room with my mail and reviewed every document carefully. My bank account showed my usual movements, nothing out of the ordinary. But there was something that worried me. My debit card? I always kept it in my wallet, but lately I didn't remember using it and wasn't sure where I had left it. I checked my purse. It wasn't there. I checked my dresser. Neither. A cold panic began to take over me. I left my room and went directly to the living room, where Jessica was watching television. "Have you seen my debit card?" "No." "Did you lose it?" she asked, without taking her eyes off the screen. But I noticed how her fingers tensed on the remote control. "It was in my wallet." "Well, maybe you left it somewhere. At your age, it is normal to forget where you put things. At your age. Always at your age." As if my 71 years automatically turned me into an incompetent person. I called the bank immediately and blocked my card. The employee informed me that there had been 3 recent transactions that I did not recognize. 2 withdrawals at ATMs, of $50 each, and a purchase at a clothing store for $75. "When were those transactions?" I asked, feeling my heart beating forcefully. 3 days ago. 2 days ago. And yesterday afternoon, Mrs. Eleanor, yesterday afternoon, when Jessica had supposedly gone out to buy groceries for the house, I hung up the phone with trembling hands. $175. They had stolen $175 from my own account, and I knew exactly who it had been. I went to look for Michael. I found him in the yard, checking his phone. "Michael, I need to talk to you. Now." Something in my tone must have alerted him, because he put the phone down immediately and looked at me attentively. "Someone used my debit card without my permission. They withdrew $175 in the last 3 days. Mom, it was probably you and you don't remember. It was not me. And I think I know who it was." Michael stood up, his expression hardening. "If you are insinuating that Jessica took your card, you are very wrong. The transactions match the days she went out alone. One of them was yesterday, at a clothing store. Jessica has her own money. She doesn't need yours. Then explain to me where my card is, Michael. Explain those transactions." My son approached me and, for the first time in months, spoke to me harshly. "Mom, you are paranoid. You are inventing things because you don't want to accept that you need help. You probably lost your card somewhere and someone else found it. I had it in my wallet. In this house, well, obviously you didn't take good care of it." I stood looking at him. This man I no longer recognized. This man who chose to defend his wife instead of even considering that I might be telling the truth. "I already blocked the card," I said finally, "and I am going to the bank tomorrow to ask for a full report of all my transactions." "Do whatever you want," Michael replied, taking his phone again. "But stop accusing my wife without proof." That night, during dinner, Jessica acted as if nothing had happened. She talked animatedly about her day, about a friend who had called, about plans to remodel the kitchen of my house. "I think we should change these cabinets," she said, touching the wood with disdain. "They are too old. New ones would make the house look more modern, more valuable, more valuable." As if she were already planning to sell my house. The next day I went to the bank as soon as it opened. I didn't tell Jessica or Michael anything. I simply got up early, got dressed, and left the house before they woke up. The bank employee, a kind young man named Kevin, attended me with patience. I explained the situation, and he printed a detailed report of all my transactions from the last 2 months. There they were, not just the 3 transactions I already knew about, but others as well. Small withdrawals that I hadn't made, $20 here, $30 there. In total, they added up to almost $400 in the last month and a half. "Mrs. Eleanor, do you recognize these transactions?" Kevin asked, pointing to each one with his pen. "No. None of them. Then we need to start a dispute process. Do you have any idea who could have accessed your card?" I hesitated for a moment. Accusing Jessica directly without absolute proof could complicate things legally, but I needed to protect myself. "I think someone in my house took my card without permission." Kevin nodded with understanding. He had probably seen similar cases before. "I am going to completely block this account and open a new one for you. The new card will arrive at this branch in 5 business days. Do you prefer to pick it up here instead of having it mailed to your home?" "Yes, please. I will pick it up personally." I also took the opportunity to make other changes. I updated my contact phone number so only my cell phone appeared in the system, not the house landline. And I confirmed that only my sister Barbara had authorized access to my account in case of emergency. "Is there anything else I can do for you, Mrs. Eleanor?" Kevin asked. "Yes. If anyone other than me or my sister tries to get information about my accounts, you can refuse to give it. Absolutely. Your financial information is confidential. No one can access it without your written authorization." I left the bank feeling a little more in control. At least my finances were protected now. But I knew the war was just beginning. When I returned home, Jessica was waiting for me in the living room with her arms crossed and a furious expression. "Where were you?" "I went out to run an errand." "What kind of errand? Why didn't you tell me?" "I don't have to report my movements to you, Jessica. This is my house." She approached me, invading my personal space. "You went to the bank, didn't you? I saw you leave with that folder of documents. That is none of your business." "Everything you do is my business," she shouted, and her mask of a concerned person finally fell completely. "You live in a fantasy thinking you can still manage your life alone. You are an old woman who needs supervision." Michael appeared from the kitchen, drawn by the shouts. "What's going on now?" "Your mother went to the bank to do who knows what," Jessica said, pointing at me. Probably to change things, to hide information from us, to be selfish as always. I went to protect my money, I said, looking directly at my son. Because someone has been using my card without permission and withdrawing my money. We already told you that is paranoia, Michael responded, but his voice sounded less sure than before. It is not paranoia when I have the bank report that proves it. I took the papers out of my purse and spread them on the coffee table. There were all the transactions marked in red, the ones I hadn't authorized. Jessica leaned in to look at the documents and, for a second, I saw panic in her eyes. But she recovered quickly. This proves nothing. You could have made those transactions and forgotten. Or someone cloned your card. These things happen. The card was in my house, in my wallet, and the transactions started exactly when you came to live here. Are you accusing me of theft? Jessica's voice went up an octave. Me? After everything I have done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Jessica? Reorganize my house without permission, give me orders, treat me as if I were incompetent, steal my money? She turned toward Michael. Are you going to allow your mother to talk to me like that? Are you going to let her accuse me of being a thief? Michael looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something that broke my heart. It wasn't support. It wasn't concern for me. It was annoyance. He was annoyed because I was causing problems. Mom, I think you're exaggerating. Jessica wouldn't steal from you. I have proof, Michael. You have a paper that shows transactions. That doesn't prove who made them. So you believe me, or you believe her? The silence that followed said it all. My son had chosen, and he hadn't chosen me. I think we all need to calm down, Michael said finally. Mom, maybe you should rest. You've been very stressed lately. Very stressed. As if the stress were my fault, and not the result of months of abuse and manipulation. I took my documents and went to my room. I locked the door, something I had never done before in my own house, and sat on my bed to think. I needed a plan. I couldn't keep living like this. But I also couldn't simply kick Michael out of my house. He was my son. Despite everything, he was still my son. I took out my phone and called my sister Barbara. Eleanor, what's wrong? Your voice sounds strange. And then, for the first time in months, I told her everything. Every detail, every hurtful comment, every invasion of my privacy, every stolen transaction, everything. Barbara listened in silence until I finished. Eleanor, you have to get that woman out of your house. And if Michael doesn't support you, he has to go too. He is my son, Barbara, and you are his mother. A mother who is being abused in her own home. Eleanor, this isn't going to get better. This woman isn't going to stop until she has total control of your life, your house, your money. Do you understand what I am telling you? I understood. Of course I understood. But understanding and acting were two different things. I don't know if I can do it alone. You are not alone. I am here. Come stay with me for a few days. Get away from that situation and think clearly. I will help you. And my house? Your house will still be there. But you need to get out of that toxic environment before it destroys you. Barbara was right. I knew it. But there was something else I needed to do first. Barbara, I need to ask you a favor. Anything. I need you to investigate Jessica, her past, her history, anything you can find. I have a feeling this isn't the first time she's done something like this. Leave it to me. I have a friend who works in HR and has access to certain databases. I'll ask her to look up information. We hung up with the promise of talking the next day. I felt a little less alone knowing Barbara was on my side. That night, I didn't leave my room for dinner. I had no appetite and didn't want to see Jessica or Michael. I heard when they knocked on my door a couple of times, but I didn't answer. Eventually, they left me in peace. Around 10 at night, my phone rang. It was Barbara. Eleanor, I found something. Jessica worked in 3 different places in the last 5 years. In 2 of them, she was fired for financial irregularities, and there was a complaint against her by an elderly woman 2 years ago. She accused her of theft, but the case was closed for lack of solid evidence. My blood froze. An elderly woman. Yes. The lady was the grandmother of an ex-partner of Jessica's. She lived with her for several months, and when she left, valuables and money were missing. But they couldn't prove it legally. So this was her pattern. Jessica preyed on the elderly, and I was her next victim. The following days were unbearable. Now that I knew the truth about Jessica, every move she made put me on alert. I watched her when she thought I wasn't looking, checking drawers, touching objects, mentally calculating how much each thing in my house was worth. But I was also doing my own calculations. I needed time to organize my exit, to protect my most valuable belongings, to make sure that when I left, I didn't leave anything vulnerable behind. One afternoon, while Jessica was in the shower and Michael had gone out to work, I took the opportunity to store some important items. My mother's jewelry, some personal documents, old photographs. I hid them in a box inside my closet, behind the winter clothes I knew Jessica wouldn't touch for months. I also called my lawyer, Mr. Thompson, a 60-year-old man who had handled my family's legal affairs for decades. Mrs. Eleanor, how can I help you? Mr. Thompson, I need to update my will. Urgently. Is there a problem? I prefer to explain it in person. Can you see me tomorrow? Of course. 10 in the morning works for you? Perfect. The next morning, I invented that I had a doctor's appointment. Jessica insisted on accompanying me. It's not necessary, I told her, taking my purse. It's just a routine checkup. At your age, someone should accompany you. What if the doctor gives you bad news? You'll need support. Jessica, I have gone to the doctor alone for 5 years. I will be fine. But she was already taking her jacket and keys. I am not going to discuss this. Michael asked me to take care of you, and that is what I am going to do. I felt panic. I couldn't go to the lawyer's office with Jessica following me. I thought fast. Okay, but I need to stop by the pharmacy first to pick up a prescription. You can wait for me in the car if you want. Jessica accepted reluctantly. When we arrived at the pharmacy, I went in and waited a few minutes. Then I left through the back door that went to another street, caught a taxi, and gave the address of the lawyer's office. I sent a text message to Jessica from the taxi. I ran into a friend. I'm going to have coffee with her. I'll be back in a couple of hours. Her response arrived immediately. What? Where are you? Come back now. I turned off my phone. Mr. Thompson's office was downtown, in an old but well-maintained building. His secretary showed me in immediately. Mrs. Eleanor, you look worried, Thompson said, motioning for me to sit. Tell me what's happening. And I told him everything. Every detail, every abuse, every theft, every manipulation. Thompson listened attentively, occasionally taking notes. Mrs. Eleanor, what you are describing to me is a clear case of financial and emotional abuse toward a senior citizen. There are laws that protect you. I don't want to get my son in legal trouble. I understand. But you need to protect yourself. First, let's update your will. Currently, Michael is your sole heir, correct? Yes. Do you want to keep it that way? I thought about my son, about the boy I had raised, about the man he had become, about the decisions he had made in the last few months. I want the house to go to my sister Barbara. Michael can receive a fixed sum of money, but not the property. I don't want Jessica to set foot in this house as the owner. Understood. I also recommend giving durable power of attorney for financial and medical matters, designating Barbara as your representative. This will prevent Michael or anyone else from trying to make decisions for you if something happens to you. We spent the next hour arranging all the documents. Thompson worked efficiently, and I signed every paper, feeling more relieved with every signature. Mrs. Eleanor, there is something else you should consider. A restraining order against Jessica. A restraining order. Based on what you have told me, the pattern of behavior, the proven theft, you have grounds to obtain one. This would prohibit her from approaching you or your property. But she lives in my house. Exactly. The order would force her to leave, and if Michael decides to go with her, it is his choice. The idea was tempting, but also terrifying. Was I ready to take such a drastic measure? Let me think about it, I said finally. Take your time, but don't wait too long. These situations tend to get worse, not better. I left the lawyer's office with a folder full of documents and a clearer plan in my mind, but also with a heaviness in my heart. I was preparing to lose my son, and that realization hurt more than I could express. I turned on my phone. I had 17 missed calls from Jessica and 5 from Michael, and several increasingly furious text messages. Jessica, where are you? Jessica, answer now. Jessica. This is unacceptable. Michael. Mom? Jessica is very worried. Where are you? Michael. Please answer. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I called Barbara. Can I come to your house? Now. What happened? I'll tell you when I arrive, but I need to get out of my house for a while. Come, I'm waiting for you. I took another taxi, this time straight to Barbara's house. She lived in a quiet neighborhood 2 hours away, in a small but cozy house she shared with her 2 cats. When I arrived, Barbara welcomed me with a tight hug. Eleanor, you're shaking. I just did something big, I told her, showing her the lawyer's documents. I changed my will. Jessica is not going to get my house. Barbara reviewed the papers with approval. You did the right thing. Now, you are going to stay here with me until we decide the next step. I need to go back eventually. It's my house, I know. But not today. Today you need distance and clarity. I spent the rest of the day at Barbara's house, feeling for the first time in months as if I could breathe. There was no one criticizing everything I did. There was no one checking my belongings. There was no one treating me as if I were incompetent. At night, my phone rang. It was Michael. Mom, where are you? Jessica is hysterical. I am with your Aunt Barbara. I needed time to think. Time to think? You left us worried. Jessica thought something bad had happened to you. I doubt that very much, Michael. Jessica isn't worried about me. She is worried about losing control over me. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I am talking about. Your wife has been stealing from me. She has been manipulating me, and you have allowed every second of that. Mom, enough with these accusations. They are not accusations. They are facts, and I am tired of pretending they aren't. When are you coming back? When I am ready. This is my decision, Michael. And for once, I am not going to let you or Jessica tell me what to do. I hung up before he could respond. Barbara made me a cup of tea, and we sat in her living room, in a comfortable silence. What are you going to do now? She asked finally. I am going to protect what is mine. And if that means distancing Michael from my life, then so be it. It won't be easy. None of this has been easy, Barbara. But at least now I am fighting, not just surviving. That night I slept better than I had slept in months. And when I woke up, I had a message from Mr. Thompson. Mrs. Eleanor, I investigated Jessica's past as you asked. I have information you should see. Can you come to my office? I replied that I would go the next day. Something told me that what Thompson had found would change everything. And I was right. The next morning, Barbara accompanied me to Thompson's office. I needed her support, and she insisted on being present. Thompson received us with a serious expression that let me know what he had discovered wasn't good. Mrs. Eleanor, Barbara, please sit down. He opened a folder on his desk. It was full of printed documents, reports, photographs. I hired a private investigator to check Jessica's history. What we found is concerning, to say the least. He began showing me the documents one by one. Jessica has a pattern of behavior that goes back almost 8 years. She approaches men with widowed mothers or widowed fathers, elderly people who live alone. She marries quickly, moves into the elderly relative's house, and little by little begins to take control. My stomach twisted. In 3 previous cases, she managed to get the victims to give her power of attorney over their finances. In 2 of those cases, the houses were sold for medical necessity of the victims, and the money disappeared. One of the victims ended up in a low-quality nursing home, and the other died in suspicious circumstances 6 months after losing her house. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Barbara took my hand and squeezed it tight. You are saying Jessica has done this before? Barbara asked. Not only has she done it before, she has perfected it. She knows exactly what to say, how to behave, how to gain the family's trust before showing her true face. And she always gets away with it because the victims are afraid to act against their own family. And Michael? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Does Michael know what she is? That I cannot confirm. But in previous cases, the husbands eventually realized and left her. In one case, the husband even testified against her, although there wasn't enough evidence for a criminal trial. Thompson took out more papers. I also found something else. Jessica has significant debts. Credit cards in default for over $15,000, a personal loan unpaid for $8,000, And 3 weeks ago, just before the incident where you discovered her taking your money, she received a wage garnishment notice. Everything was beginning to make sense. The urgency, the aggression, the desperation to control my money. Jessica wasn't just a manipulator. She was financially desperate. What can I do? I asked. First, do not go back to that house alone. If you decide to return, do it with a police escort to recover your most valuable belongings. Second, formally request that she leave your property. I prepared an eviction notice. Jessica has 30 days to leave. And Michael? Michael is your son. Legally, you cannot force him to leave, but you can make it clear to him that if he chooses to stay with Jessica, he must leave too. This is your house, Mrs. Eleanor. You decide who lives in it. Barbara intervened. And if Jessica refuses to leave, women like her don't give up easily. That is why I recommend the restraining order. With the history we have compiled, plus the proof of the bank theft, a judge will grant it without issue. Jessica will be legally obligated to stay away from Mrs. Eleanor and her property. I took a deep breath. It was the moment to decide. I could keep being a victim, or I could fight for what was mine. File for the restraining order, I said with a steady voice, and prepare the eviction document. Excellent decision. The papers will be ready tomorrow. In the meantime, I suggest you stay with Barbara. We left the office feeling strangely empowered. For the first time in months, I was making the decisions. I was in control. Back at Barbara's house, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Michael called over and over. Finally, I decided to answer. Mom, you need to come home. Now. I am not coming back while Jessica is there. Jessica is my wife. You can't forbid her from being in your house. It is my house, Michael. And she is no longer welcome. I am preparing eviction documents. There was silence on the other end. Then, Michael's voice sounded dangerously low. You are evicting my wife? I am protecting my home and my life from a woman who has been stealing from me and manipulating me for months, and you have allowed it. She hasn't stolen anything from you. You are paranoid. I have proof, Michael. Proof of theft. Proof of her past. Proof of what she has done to other people like me. If you want to see it, come to your aunt's house now. I am not going anywhere. And you are going to return to your house, and you are going to stop acting like a crazy person. I am not coming back. And if Jessica doesn't leave voluntarily, I will remove her with police assistance. If you do that, I'm leaving with her, and you will never see me again. His words went through me like knives. But I was no longer the weak woman of 3 months ago. I was no longer going to let fear control me. Then I suppose that is your decision, Michael, and you will have to live with it. I hung up the phone with shaking hands. Barbara hugged me while the tears finally came out. You did the right thing, she whispered to me. You did the right thing. 2 days later, Mr. Thompson called me. Mrs. Eleanor, the restraining order was approved. And I have the eviction document ready. The police can accompany you tomorrow morning to your house to serve the papers and ensure Jessica leaves. So fast? The judge reviewed all the evidence. Jessica's history, the bank records, everything. He considered that you are in immediate risk. The order is effective immediately. Jessica must leave the property within 24 hours. The next day, at 9 in the morning, a patrol car picked me up from Barbara's house. 2 officers accompanied me, Officer Davis and Officer Miller. Mrs. Eleanor, we are going to ensure this is done safely, said Officer Davis. You stay in the car until we have spoken with the people inside. If there is any problem, we will keep you safe. The ride to my house felt eternal. My heart was beating forcefully. I didn't know how Michael and Jessica would react. I didn't know if there would be violence. I didn't know if I would ever speak to my son again after this. When we arrived, Michael's car was in the driveway. They were home. The officers got out first. I stayed in the cruiser, watching through the window as they knocked on the door. Jessica opened it. Even from a distance, I could see her expression change from confusion to fury when she saw the officers' badges. Officer Davis handed her the documents. Jessica took them, read them quickly, and then exploded. This is ridiculous. You can't throw me out of my house. This is not your house, ma'am, Officer Miller responded calmly. And you have a restraining order. You must gather your belongings and leave the property in the next 24 hours. Michael, Jessica screamed into the house. Michael, come here. My son appeared at the door. His face was pale, haggard. He looked like he hadn't slept. "What is going on?" he asked. "Your mother is kicking us out. Your own mother, after everything we have done for her." Michael looked toward the patrol car. Our eyes met through the glass. I expected to see anger, or pain, or something. But what I saw was worse than any of those things. I saw resignation. My son already knew it would end like this. Maybe he had known for weeks. And in that moment, I wondered if Michael was really a victim of Jessica, or if he had been complicit all this time. Michael walked down the porch steps slowly, approaching the patrol car. Officer Davis stepped between him and the car, a hand on her belt preventively. "I just want to speak to my mother," Michael said, raising his hands in a sign of peace. The officer looked toward me, waiting for my approval. I nodded. I needed to hear what my son had to say, although a part of me feared his words. I got out of the cruiser. Michael came within 3 feet of me. He looked terrible. Deep, dark circles, unkempt beard, clothes wrinkled as if he had slept in them. "Mom," his voice broke, "it doesn't have to be like this. You made it like this, Michael. You chose this. I just wanted us all to be happy. A family. Happy? Do you think I have been happy these last few months? Do you think I have been happy being robbed, controlled, humiliated in my own home? Jessica was just trying to help. Jessica was robbing me. And you knew it. Tell me the truth. Michael, how long have you known what she really is?" My son looked away, unable to hold my gaze. And that was all the answer I needed. "You knew," I whispered, feeling my heart break into pieces. "You knew this whole time, and you did nothing. She told me it was just temporary, that we just needed a little of your money to get out of our debts, that afterwards we would pay you back everything. And I believed her." "You wanted to believe her?" "I am in love with her, Mom. Or at least, I thought I was." Jessica appeared behind Michael, with a suitcase in each hand and fury painted on every feature of her face. "Michael, are you going to stand there talking to her after what she is doing to us? Let's go." But Michael didn't move. He kept looking at me with pleading eyes. "Mom, if you drop the charges, if you let us stay, I promise everything will be different. I will protect you from now on." "Protect me?" "Michael, from whom do you think I need protection?" "From your wife, the woman you brought into my life." "Michael!" Jessica's scream was almost hysterical now. "Stop humiliating yourself in front of this ungrateful old woman." Officer Miller approached Jessica. "Ma'am, I suggest you watch your tone, and you need to leave the property now. I am not going anywhere without my husband." "Michael is an adult," Officer Davis intervened. "He can make his own decisions. You, however, have a restraining order and must leave." Jessica dropped the suitcases on the ground with violence and took out her phone. "I am going to call my lawyer. This is illegal. It is discrimination. It is abuse towards me." She began to dial with trembling fingers, but her hands shook so much the phone fell. She picked it up, tried to dial again, and then something strange happened. Her phone began to ring. She looked at the screen, and her face lost all color. "Unknown number," she murmured, but answered anyway. "Hello." I couldn't hear what they were saying on the other end, but I saw how Jessica tensed, how her eyes widened, how her breathing accelerated. "What? No. No. That is impossible. There has to be a mistake." Almost at the same time, Michael's phone also began to ring. He took it out of his pocket, looked at the screen, and answered. "Hello. Yes, this is Michael. What? How can my account be in the negative?" I saw panic take over both of them. Jessica had started screaming into the phone, her words increasingly incoherent. "No, I didn't authorize that transfer. Someone hacked my account. You have to give me that money back." Michael had hung up and was frantically checking his banking app. His face went from panic to absolute horror. "Jessica. Jessica. My account. Someone transferred all our money, the savings, everything. It's gone." "Mine too," Jessica shrieked. "Someone robbed us. It's all gone." She turned toward me, her eyes full of accusation and hate. "It was you. You did this. Somehow you accessed our accounts and robbed us." "I don't have access to your accounts," I replied calmly, although inside my heart was beating forcefully. "I don't even know your account numbers." "Liar. You hired someone. This is your revenge." Officer Davis approached. "Ma'am, Are you accusing Mrs. Eleanor of a crime? Yes. She robbed us. She hired a hacker or something. Do you have any proof of that? Jessica had no proof. She only had fury and desperation. Michael was still looking at his phone, switching from one banking app to another. His savings, his checking account, everything showed zero balances or negative numbers. I don't understand, he muttered. How is it possible? Who could do this? Jessica called her bank again, this time on speaker. The voice of the bank employee sounded professional but distant. Ma'am, according to our records, you authorized a transfer of $8,200 to an external account 3 hours ago. I didn't authorize anything. The transfer was made from your mobile app using your password and verification code. Someone stole my information. We will investigate it, ma'am, but these processes can take 30 to 60 days. In the meantime, the funds are not available. Jessica hung up and let herself fall onto the grass, hands on her head. She was starting to hyperventilate. Michael approached her, trying to calm her down, but he himself was in shock. Jessica, what did you do? What did you spend that money on? I didn't spend anything. I didn't make that transfer, but the bank says you used your password. It wasn't me. The officers exchanged looks. This had clearly escalated beyond a simple eviction. Mrs. Eleanor, Officer Davis said, approaching me. Do you have anything to do with what is happening here? Not directly, I replied honestly. But I did ask my lawyer to investigate Jessica's past. Perhaps what is happening is a consequence of her own previous actions. It wasn't a lie. Mr. Thompson had investigated Jessica, and what he had discovered was that she had many enemies. People she had scammed, people waiting for revenge. One of those people, according to what Thompson had confided in me, was a woman named Sarah, whose mother had been a victim of Jessica's 3 years ago. Sarah worked in cybersecurity, and when Thompson contacted her to ask for information about Jessica, Sarah had shown a particular interest in the case. If Jessica is trying to do the same thing to another person, Sarah had said, I would like to help stop her, whatever it takes. I hadn't explicitly asked her to do anything, but I hadn't told her not to do it either. And now, seeing Jessica crumble on my lawn, I understood what had happened. Sarah had found a way to access Jessica's accounts, perhaps through some vulnerability in her phone, or maybe Jessica used easy-to-guess passwords. However she had done it, Sarah had transferred the money somewhere Jessica could never recover it. It was justice. Not the legal justice the courts offered, but the justice victims sometimes had to take into their own hands. Jessica finally got up from the ground, her makeup running from tears, her clothes stained with grass. I'm leaving, she said with a broken voice. But this doesn't end here. I'm going to sue you all. You, your lawyer, whoever you hired to rob me. I didn't steal anything from you, I replied. But if you want to sue, go ahead. I am sure a judge will be very interested to hear about your history. Jessica grabbed her suitcases with abrupt movements, full of contained rage. She headed to her car, an old sedan parked on the street. She opened the trunk and threw the suitcases inside, with such force that one of them bounced and fell onto the pavement. Michael watched the scene without moving, paralyzed between two worlds, his wife who was leaving and his mother who was staying. Michael, are you coming or not? Jessica shouted from the car, keys in hand. My son looked at me one last time. In his eyes I saw something I hadn't seen in months. Clarity, as if he were finally waking up from a long dream. Jessica, he said, his voice barely audible. Did you really not make that transfer? Of course not. How can you even ask me that? Why have you lied before? About Mom's money? About your job? About why you really needed to stay here? Jessica stood motionless, the car door open. What did you say? I found the papers, Jessica. The notices from the credit cards in default. The garnishment notice. All hidden in your suitcase. I saw it a week ago and didn't want to believe it. Michael, I can explain. No. No more explanations. No more lies. My son turned toward me, and tears began to roll down his cheeks. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was weak. I was stupid. I allowed her to hurt you because I was afraid of being alone, because I thought if I lost her, I would never find anyone else. I took a step toward him, feeling my own heart break. Michael, I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But you need to know I never wanted things to go this far. When she started taking your money, I told her to stop, but she convinced me that you were selfish, that it was your duty to help us. And I believed her, because I wanted to believe her. Michael, are you coming or not? Jessica's voice was a desperate shriek now. No, my son replied, without taking his eyes off me. I'm not going. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the officers seemed to be holding their breath. Jessica got out of the car, leaving the door open. What did you say? I said I'm not going with you. It's over, Jessica. Our marriage, this charade, everything. It's over. You can't do this. I am your wife. You are a liar and a thief, and I was foolish enough to help you, but not anymore. Jessica tried to approach Michael, but Officer Miller stepped in. Ma'am, you have a restraining order. You cannot approach the property or any family member. Michael isn't included in that order. Now I am, Michael said, his voice firmer than I had heard it in months. Officer, can I request to be included in the restraining order? You can make the formal request at the station, Officer Davis responded. Considering the circumstances, I am sure it will be approved. Jessica looked at us all as if we were strangers. Her perfect plan had completely crumbled. She had no money, no house, and now no husband. All of you, she spat the words with venom, all of you are going to regret this. Especially you, old woman. This doesn't end here. Yes, it does, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. It ends exactly here. You leave now, and if you try to contact me or return to this house, the officers will arrest you. Understood? Jessica held my gaze for a long moment. Then, without another word, she got into her car, slammed the door shut, and peeled out, tires screeching against the pavement. I watched her drive away down the street until the car disappeared around the corner. And only then did I allow myself to breathe. The officers stayed a while longer, ensuring everything was in order, taking additional statements from Michael about Jessica's activities. When they finally left, it was just my son and me, standing in the yard of my house. Can I come in? Michael asked, his voice small, like a child's. It is your house, I replied. It always has been. We went in together. The house felt different, lighter, as if a dark weight had been lifted. Michael let himself fall onto the living room sofa and covered his face with his hands. I ruined everything. I sat next to him, keeping a little distance. I needed him to understand that although I forgave him, things wouldn't go back to how they were before. Not immediately. Yes, you ruined a lot of things. You hurt me deeply, Michael. You allowed someone to enter my life and hurt me, and you did nothing to protect me. I know. I am going to need time. To trust you again. To feel like this is my house again, without fear that someone is going through my things or taking my money. I understand. I can leave if you want. I can look for an apartment. I don't want you to leave. You are my son. But I need you to understand that things are going to be different now. This is my house, and I make the decisions about my life. No one else. Michael nodded, wiping away tears. Mom, how did you know? How did you know what kind of person Jessica was? At first, I just had a feeling. But then I hired an investigator. He discovered Jessica has done this before, with other families, with other elderly people. My God. And I didn't see anything. You saw what you wanted to see. Love makes us blind sometimes. Was it love? Now I'm not even sure. We sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in oranges and pinks. What is going to happen to the money we lost? Michael asked finally. I don't know, but I suspect whoever took that money had their own reasons. Reasons related to what Jessica did to them in the past. You had something to do with it, not directly. But let's say when you investigate someone's past, sometimes you discover that person has enemies, and those enemies can make their own decisions. Michael processed this, and then, to my surprise, a small smile appeared on his face. Poetic justice, something like that. In the following weeks, life began to return to a new normal. Michael stayed with me, but with clear boundaries. He sought help from a therapist to process everything that had happened and understand how he had allowed Jessica to manipulate him. He got a second job to save up and eventually move into his own place. Jessica tried to contact us several times, violating the restraining order. Each time, we reported the contact to the police. Eventually, the calls stopped. According to Thompson, she had left the city, probably looking for her next victim somewhere else. But something had changed. Other elderly people who had been victims of Jessica began to come forward, encouraged by my case. Formal complaints were filed, and although the legal process was slow, at least there was hope that Jessica would finally face consequences for her actions. Barbara came to visit me every week. We drank coffee on the porch, like we used to do before Jessica entered our lives. She helped me process everything, to heal, to recover confidence in myself. "You are stronger now," she told me one afternoon. "What Jessica tried to do, what she tried to take from you, she didn't achieve. You are still the owner of your life." She was right. I had gone through the fire and come out the other side, scarred but whole. Michael and I rebuilt our relationship slowly. There were difficult conversations, tears, moments of tension. But there was also forgiveness, because in the end, he was still my son, and I was still his mother. And sometimes, love means giving second chances, although with eyes wider open. 6 months after the day Jessica left, I was sitting in my garden, enjoying the morning sun with a cup of coffee in my hand. My house was quiet. My money was safe. My life was mine again. Michael came out to the porch, dressed in his work uniform. "I'm leaving, Mom. I'll be back tonight. Be careful, son." He approached and kissed me on the forehead, something he hadn't done since before meeting Jessica. "I love you, Mom, and thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For being stronger than me." I watched him walk toward his car, and I felt a deep peace in my heart. It hadn't been easy. It had required courage, determination, and the will to confront my own family when necessary. But it had been worth it, because now, at 71 years old, I knew something with absolute certainty. No one, ever again, would have control over my life except myself. I stayed in the garden until my coffee grew cold, watching butterflies fly among the flowers I had planted, in the house I had built myself, living the life I had chosen myself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely free.